If you're watching this video, it's probably because you just received a medical debt collection in the mail, or you're currently paying on a medical collection. Well, in this video, we're going to talk about ways to settle your medical collection debt for literally pennies on the dollar, or how to get that medical debt forgiven. And if you've already made payments on your medical collections, I'm going to tell you a way that you might actually be entitled to a refund for those payments. So let's get into it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Jazzy Mac. Thank you so much for coming back. And if you're new to my channel, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and turn on your notifications. I have some pretty heavy stuff I'm going to talk about as far as your medical collections, those icky collections that seem to haunt all of us. I'm going to break it down into two scenarios, basically, for if you have a medical collection that you just got that's not on your credit versus a medical collection that is on your credit. And we're going to talk about the differences and how to treat those collections and how to make them go away. So before we get into it, guys, I want you to basically do something for me so I can gauge what type of content I need to put out as a follow-up to this. Go ahead and type a number 1 in the comment box if you currently have medical debt in collections. Just give me a number 1 and give me a number 2 if you've actually paid off a collection for medical debt. So a number 1 if you currently have medical collections, a number 2 if you've paid off a medical collection within the last few years. Because I'm telling you, the ones, for those of you that have paid off a collection, you might be entitled to a refund. That's why I'm trying to get you guys to understand, like, this is serious business. You don't have to just buckle down and pay stuff because sometimes they're not entitled to that payment. So let's hop right in and let's talk about some things. So let's just get into the first scenario where if you have a medical collection that, let's say you just got it in the mail today, what you would need to do to handle that and to possibly make it go away. So let's say you got a procedure and that procedure cost $2,000, but you've received a collection in the mail for that same medical procedure that states that you owe $3,000. And there is a breakdown that shows that you owe $2,000 for the procedure, you owe $500 for the collection fee, and then they're charging you $500 in interest. Let's just assume that's how they came to the $3,000 number. Do you pay it? Absolutely not. You know why? Because Jazzy Mac told you not to. And because Jazzy Mac is going to tell you what your consumer rights are as well. So let's look at your rights. The first thing that you want to do anytime you get a medical collection notice in the mail, whether you think it's right or not, you always want to ask for validation. When we ask for validation, we are challenging the collection agency to provide proof that the account indeed belongs to us, number 1, and that those charges that they're stating are ours. We want them to be able to back up what they're saying and to prove it, and not just say, oh, here's a balance, but to prove it by providing the original contracts with our wet signature that shows that we agreed to those terms and agreements. So that's the first thing you want to do. Now, you don't necessarily want to do this over the phone, because it's not a paper trail. And anytime that you communicate with a collection agency, you always want to have a paper trail in case you have to escalate it at a later time. And I'll talk about who you can escalate to in these situations. So the first thing you're going to do is write out your validation letter to the collection agency asking for the original contract, but you're also going to include the line for HIPAA, because according to HIPAA, your information cannot be shared with a third party without your prior consent, meaning that you would have had to sign an agreement that says you give authorization for the medical facility to share that information with a third party, in this case being the collection agency. And them reporting information about you as far as sending you a notice saying that you owe something, that's sharing your information. So we want to challenge that because one, it's not legal for them to do that if you didn't give prior consent. And then two, it's also a way for you to just make sure that you're keeping people honest and you're not letting people take advantage of you. So if you ask for the validation letter and they're not able to provide you with validation within 30 days, then legally they're not able to collect it, and they should either refer the account back to the facility or they should forgive the debt altogether if they have indeed purchased that debt from the facility. So again, if it's not valid, meaning they can't provide you the original contracts, they cannot continue to pursue that from you because you, number one, don't have an agreement with them. In addition, where you trip them up at is if they do provide a contract to you and that contract does not explicitly state that you give authorization to a third party to access your records, that is a HIPAA violation. When we talk about HIPAA violations, now we're getting into where they can be severely fined by the CFPB, which is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. In fact, there was just a case where there was a collection agency that actually violated one of the HIPAA laws, and they were required to pay consumers back not only the money that the consumer had spent paying off the debt, but they had to give them an extra $1,000 for damages and as a violation fee. And they also had to pay $250,000, I believe, in restitution. So trust me, you have rights and you need to exercise those rights. And so if the collection efforts were to continue after they have failed to provide validation, that's when you want to do your CFPB complaint. And you want to file that complaint against the collection agency for illegally pursuing a debt and also for violating your HIPAA, violating the HIPAA privacy laws. And trust me, the CFPB does not take that type of stuff lightly. They take it very seriously. So usually that will result in, if it's a HIPAA violation, usually the debt will either be forgiven or you'll be not required to pay the debt. There's going to be some sort of, outcome if the HIPAA was violated. So that's if you don't get validation and it, is a violation. However, on the flip side, as far as medical debt being reported on your credit, when it's past that initial 30-day mark, when you first get it in the mail, if it's on your credit, there's a couple of different things you want to do to, again, challenge it. So as far as asking for validation in this case, if it's on your credit, I would personally do the dispute process with the credit bureau. In the first scenario, we did it with the collection agency. In this scenario, we do it with the credit bureau because they're the ones that are listing it out. So you want to just write your dispute letters, ask for validation, and also mention HIPAA. And again, I have the templates below. If you don't feel comfortable just drafting a letter from scratch, I have templates below for how you ask for medical debt validation and how you need to insert that HIPAA wording so that your case is treated in a different way than how they would treat general disputes. So I have that below. But again, you want to make sure that in the case of it being on your credit report, you go and dispute it directly with the three bureaus if that's where they're appearing. If you don't hear back in 30 days or if they can't validate it in 30 days, then by law, they are supposed to remove that account completely from your credit report altogether. Okay. So if they do not do that and they do not provide validation, they don't provide you the original contracts and they can't, show you like a signature where you've signed off acknowledging the debt within a contract, then that's when we also, again, want to escalate to Big Brother. Who's Big Brother? The CFPB. The CFPB is where you'll file the complaint against the credit bureau and against the collection agency on the same complaint. I also have that mapped out in my credit roadmap. I've tried to make it super, super easy for you guys to follow these steps because they really are simple steps to get that debt like completely removed. So that's just pretty much, the rundown for if these debts can't be validated. Now, let's say you have a collection that is completely valid. You've read through the contract. You've acknowledged that, you actually did give a third party access to your information. You signed off on it. Let's say the debt is completely valid. Well, what you can do is you can offer to do a debt settlement. Now, if it's on your credit report, we're not doing anything without a written notice saying that they will delete it from your credit after payment. That's known as a pay for delete. But if it is not on your credit yet, then you can negotiate for a much lower amount. And the thing is, they purchase these debts for pennies on the dollar. They can buy $1,000 debt for literally $100. So if you owe a collection of $1,000, but you just say, hey, I only have 200, that's it. Take it or leave it. They're normally going to take it, especially if you use the B word. What is the B word? The B word is bankruptcy. If you ever mention like, hey, I just want to clear this debt up. I want to settle it for less. I only have $200. If you don't accept it, then I'm just going to add it to my bankruptcy pile and you guys won't get anything. I mean, they're going to say, oh, wait, no, we'll take it. Or, hey, could you do 40% instead? Or can you do 50% of the debt to mark it as resolved and for us to take it off your credit or stop pursuing you, whatever the case may be. So you want to exercise using the B word if that situation applies to you. Some of you may have different strategies or tactics that you may use. But for me, it was using the B word because at one point I did consider bankruptcy until I found out that, student loans wouldn't go away with bankruptcy. That was before I paid off my student loans. That was years ago. But the B word, use it to your advantage, especially if you're going through a financial hardship. I'm not telling you to file for bankruptcy, but I'm telling you to use it strategically as a way to convince them to settle your debt. And as I mentioned, if you've already paid some medical collections, there may possibly be a refund in your future, depending on who you paid. And I'll explain that. So I'm just going to look at my notes here. That same story that I was telling you about when CFPB took action against that medical debt collector and charged him with that $500,000 penalty for violating HIPAA laws. So basically, when you get any type of collection letter in the mail, 5 days prior to you getting that letter in the mail, you're supposed to have gotten a phone call. A verbal phone call saying, hey, it's ABC Collection Company. We're calling to collect a debt. And here's your debt amount. So after you get that call, they're supposed to send you a written notice of the debt. What happens many times is people go and pull up their credit report and they look and see that they've got a medical collection on there and they never even got anything in the mail. No one ever called them. No one ever gave them the opportunity to rectify it. It just popped up on their credit report. That is a direct violation of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau's guidelines around medical debt collection. You have to give the consumer a fair amount of time to rectify that debt and to resolve it. But many companies are very cutthroat. They won't give you that opportunity to resolve it, and they'll immediately report it to your credit because now they're using that as a scare tactic to get you to just pay them. And, again, that is against the law. So if you are one of those people that's happened to, you file your complaint with the CFPB, and depending on the company that you're filing it against, you may be entitled to getting not only a refund back for the medical collection amount that you paid and having it removed from your credit, but you also might be entitled to getting up to $1,000 in damages. And no, that doesn't even require you to go to court. Many a times those are things that are settled outside of court, and those are things that have already amounts that have already been allocated for consumers. So you want to make sure that you read up on that. I'll actually put that article, I think I'll put it in the description box for you guys to read, because it's a very, very interesting piece of knowledge to have, as far as, like, I never knew that you could get refunds for medical collection debt until a few years ago when I disputed some things. And, you know, you can either dispute it, you know, through the method I've discussed, or sometimes you can even dispute it through the bank. If you can prove that the CFPB has stated that they illegally collected those funds from you, you can absolutely dispute that with the bank and get your money back, as long as it's not past, you know, the bank's dispute window. So again, you know, challenge every single medical collection that you get. It is your consumer right. Do not pay something blindly. Even if you think you owe it, challenge it, because chances are they've tacked on some fees that you didn't even pay attention to, and that's how they get rich. So, in the course of doing that, never just admit to owing a debt. Always say, hey, I don't know if I owe that. And what? You know, you want to like play dumb, because if you admit to owing it, or if you acknowledge the debt, then that resets the clock for the statute of limitations for how long they can collect or pursue the debt from you. So I hope all of that makes sense. You know, I hate that this country is just built on greed from these corporations that take advantage of consumers. And so that's why I try to put this information out there. And I hope that it was helpful. Let me know what your situation is, if you are currently facing a collection, or if you're being harassed by a collection agency, which is also illegal. Let's talk about that in the comments. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed it. Until the next time, people, I will see you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay beautiful. Bye.